Welcome to the Never Seen It podcast, the only podcast called Never Seen It that's worth listening to. With us tonight, Mr. Arnie, the one-man party. A.K.A. Arnold is here. Mr. Daily Dares, a.k.a. Filipino Grigio, a.k.a. Alex Callego, the brothers Callego. Mr. Ghost Nerd 88, a.k.a. Justin Holden. Mr. Milkman America, a.k.a. Chris, is here tonight. And then there's me, Boots Too Big, a.k.a. Adrian De La Torre. With us tonight, a special guest, Jessica Quaz, is an independent writer and director. You can also catch her on her new YouTube channel, at Jess Quaz, where she'll soon be releasing long-form video essays about movies and pop culture. Welcome, Jess. Thank you for being on the show with us tonight.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course,
Absolutely.
Of course. We're happy to have you here. Yeah. And the movie we're discussing tonight is the 2008 film Speed Racer.
Racing's everything. For my family, it isn't just a sport. It's way more important than that.
Directed by the Wachowskis, starring Emile Hirsch, Christina Ricci, John Goodman, Susan Sarandon, Matthew Fox, Roger Allam. The film is about Speed Racer, a young, brilliant racing driver. When corruption in the racing leagues costs his brother his life, Speed must team up with the police and the mysterious Racer X to bring an end to the corruption and criminal activities. Of course, this is just a fantasy because there is no corruption in real life. Justin, I believe this was your movie. Why did you choose Speed Racer?
So this movie came out back in 2008 in theaters. As far as I can recollect, we didn't do I didn't go to the theater to see this movie. I think I just saw it on DVD, but I was very excited to see it. If I did see it in theaters, I don't really remember, but I feel like 2008 was also a time where a bunch of other movies were coming out. I think that it kind of got overshadowed a little bit by a couple of other big movies. I think the first one that comes to the top of my head about releases is Iron Man, and Marvel was that new big thing going on, and everybody was super invested in the movies that were coming out for Marvel. I think this movie kind of got a little bit overlooked in the theater, but aside from that, I think it's a wonderful movie that the directors of the Matrix, the Wachowskis, they went to direct this movie, and it was such a fun movie when I first watched it, and then going back into it now with fresh new eyes, because it's been years since I've seen this movie. I think I appreciate it even more now than I did back then. I don't think I appreciated what it was then, but that's for the most part what I think why I think I chose this movie. That, and there's a current love for this movie going around recently. It did have an IMAX re-release in theaters for a short week, and they're getting a brand new 4K Steelbook edition coming out on May 19th, so before or after this episode comes out.
Gotcha. I also remember this other little movie that came out called The Dark Knight 2008, but that was a little obscure
those movies
film.
Suck.
Yeah. Alex, you had something?
I'm kidding, internet. I'm just kidding.
I was just going to follow up with Justin, how he said he didn't get to watch it in theaters, and it's probably tracks because most people didn't watch it in theaters. It was considered a commercial flop. It was made for 120 million and only made 90 million in the theaters. But it didn't pick up steam until it hit DVD. So it kind of tracks for most people, and that's when it started picking up traction for a lot of fans. And it also is because that, from what I read, it was the first movie that they wanted to, the Wachowskis wanted to make that wasn't a rated R film. They wanted to make a family film, and they also, the interesting thing about it is that they wanted to make a family film. But a lot of their inspiration, Lana Wachowski cited that she wanted to make the movie with inspirations from James Joyce, Picasso, Cubism, and Liechtenstein.
That's very
and
eclectic mix.
They wanted to make a movie that completely abandoned narrative. And to do that, to make a children's movie and do that, and it kind of spells disaster as for the most part. So.
Yeah. Chris, you had something?
That was a great argument for why it flopped. Like, sometimes I think when we talk about like passion projects and things that like we want to do and commercial success, there's a reason why a lot of like the big box office stuff hits so hard is because they're following a formula. They have like all these specific actors, like they spent $120 million on this, and that's a lot compared to what was actually shown. And I think that is unfortunately like tied into like when it was released, right? It took $120 million to produce a movie like that back then, whereas like if they were to release it now, they could have done it for $5 million. Like,
well,
and those are pre-recession prices.
To be fair though, they when they were making this movie, they shopped the movie around to several different design houses, and they came back with two options that they really wanted to do. One, they wanted to go really mid-century modern, very very realism, and they were gonna do like celebrate cars and car culture and stuff like that. And then they went to the opposite direction, which was like a lot of stuff that was going on that day. They were going towards that whole comic booky sort of thing, and then they wanted to like celebrate anime, Speed Racer being one of the very first anime shows to be even hit the US. They decided to go with that, and they were one of the first few films that like filmed in a warehouse full of green screen, and that's how they were able to pull it off, a lot of those effects off. And let me just say, I really love this movie. I'm not in the camp that doesn't like this movie. I love this movie. So.
Well, you're about to find out real quick. Jessica?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I thought that was really interesting that you said they like got rid of all narrative structure, because I don't dislike this movie, but my biggest issue with it is that there's like too much narrative going on. Like there is a lot happening story-wise, and I think it would even further benefit from like trimming some of those out, because visually there's so much happening that is like so exciting that it's really easy to get lost in that alone. And then when you kind of are like, wait a minute, but story-wise, where are we? I don't remember. I get lost a lot in the plot here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, because this movie was, I think it clocked in at like 2 hours plus, 2 hours and some change. I don't know that a movie like this, as campy as this, needs to be more than an hour 30. Justin?
Yeah, I can understand where you're all coming from, where it's like it's kind of everywhere. That's why I feel like this movie is definitely one of those types of like second watches in a way, only because like after watching it, I don't know, I think this is probably the third time I've ever seen this movie, but I think it's paced in such a way where it's like they don't want you to get too caught up in like the origin story side of things. I think the Wachowskis are like, this is an opinion, not a fact, but I think the Wachowskis had this idea of like, okay, let's not like pander to the audience and just give them like a full-on origin story. What they did, like especially with the intro of the movie, they kind of went back and forth between like past and present, and they kind of like pieced things together as his current race was going on, to just to kind of give you an insight on like who these characters are and why they're important, and like why Racer X is the way that he is. I think it's done in such a way that kind of mimics the original cartoon animated series, because even in the original cartoon animated series, if you've ever watched it, Adrian,
I have not.
You can tell that it's very, very quick paced, fast, sporadic, but I also think that's the point with Speed Racer in general, and that's what they were trying to get across, is that it's quick. You have to get all this information into a 20-minute episode, and the animation style was also super janky, but that's also where the charm comes in. Not only is like his name's Speed Racer and he races, but also the show is super quick too, and so is the pacing of this movie. Everything is about like they just drop you in and it just go the entire time. And I think it is a little bit of a kind of a neck jerker a little bit when it comes to trying to keep up with the storytelling. So I see where you come from with that.
Yeah. Jessica?
I will say the beginning is probably my favorite part of the whole movie. I love that beginning. I love this like non-linear storytelling of like here's his life, here's where we're at right now. This is sort of everything leading up to it, but it's told in these like really interesting little segments, like the most important parts. I personally have never watched the original anime. I didn't even know his like government name is actually Speed Racer. Like I didn't know that. I thought it was just like what they called him. But so I was also curious as I was rewatching it this time, how I would have maybe like taken in this movie had I been a fan of the animation and like what that is sort of like. Like I don't know if there were little pieces from the series that are in this movie storytelling wise that I just like have no idea about. So maybe that would have made everything going on easier to digest if I had already had that blueprint going into it.
Chris?
Yeah, those are good points. And yeah, I would definitely agree. Like the beginning starts off really, really strong. And it just really interesting leading into the rest of the movie where it just kind of like disperses off into its own separate lanes. But like the point that I want to like kind of touch on is that the movie's really unique, but you can also like tell whether other directors pulled from this movie as inspiration or it was influenced by movies around its time. Like when I watched this movie, I wrote down like Cat in the Hat, the live action movie, like from like how over the top and colorful it was. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which did come up after this movie, but in the same sense of like pulling from a source material and like turning it into the big screen. With those two though, like when I think about those as being, in my opinion, like successful movies, whether it was box office or not, they played up to the adult audience. And so especially when it comes to like this source material of like, okay, I want to make a family movie, but then like the people who watch that content are adults, it kind of like does a disservice because there was so much information in this movie that to like make it visually stimulating for a kid is awesome. But like to your point, like the narrative was so all over the place. There's so many like nuances to this movie that are either get completely missed or they hit you over the head so many times with like, this is what we're trying to do. Don't you see it? Isn't it cool? And so like when you pack all of this into like a 2-hour 10 movie, like by the end of it, you're just like, what did I just experience? Because it's so much. And like, who's the intended audience? Because that's at the end of the day, that's where I'm like, okay, they didn't appease any audience member. They just kind of like threw a bunch out there, and some for the kids, some for the adults, some for like the film people, some people who don't even like film enjoy. And I think it kind of gets it in its own way in some ways.
Can you all talk about some of the nuances because I didn't quite catch them.
Well, we'll get into that, Alex.
Yeah, I do agree that it's all over the place, and that was like one of the difficulties in marketing this film with their intention of making a family film. They're like, so the Wachowskis are a very family oriented family, right? Throughout their whole career. Oh, like from like the Matrix, the family their families would constantly be at the set, and so they've always wanted it. And the producer of this film, I mean, like almost all their films was producer Joel Silver. And Joel Silver, he like kind of championed a lot of like this, but then he was the one like, well, let's go the opposite way of what you guys are doing, and let's do like a family film. And because of like what I had talked about before about like how the styles and with a desire to do a family film like kind of clash when they went into marketing film, they even like released a lot of toys and things like that, and they just didn't know how to market it very well. They even did like test screenings of it. Test screenings failed with kids. It also failed with like some of the adults because they're like, even some of the adults didn't know what Speed Racer was. It was like such an old property, such an old IP that like even in the 2008 when it came out, people were like, there were fans, but a lot of like anime fans had moved on to like newer, like I think like once like Akira hit, that's when like, oh, people had moved on to like more mature styles of anime and everything.
I think a lot of people were probably watching the like Batman shows and like the old school because Speed Racer like came out around the 60s, and and it wasn't a very long show as far as like anime is concerned. They may have more episodes, but as far as like just a straight up regular animated series, I think it comes up to like 50 or 52 episodes.
Jessica?
That's really interesting to me about test audience with children doing so poorly, because I would think like even with all the story, a lot of that happening, we still have like these bright, fun races and all the kind of excitement kids love. And when you said that, I kind of wondered if the reason for that was maybe Emil Hirsch leading this, because while I was watching it, I realized he takes himself very seriously all the time. Like he's just a very serious actor. And I think this could have been better if it was led by someone who was willing to be more silly and camp, because I feel like he's almost like too quiet and too muted for
stoic.
how like big, too stoic for this like really boisterous, crazy world.
You're getting paid money.
To be fair though, the whole cast, they were committed to the bit. They all seemingly like watched the source material, and they really leaned into the source material. And each character that you watch, I know Adrian, you didn't watch the cartoon. Adrian, Justin can attest to this. He's seen the cartoon.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jessica, because when it comes to Emil Hirsch's acting as Speed Racer, he. And I agree. He's trying to do this serious role, and like I appreciate him for this role. Like I think, like who else at that time would have even like been able to fill those shoes, because Speed Racer is kind of an eclectic, fast talking, but very intelligent type of character. But that's the thing, is that's one thing that takes me out of it just a little bit. He was a little bit too serious. When he was racing, he just kind of had this face of like, I absolutely need to win this race at all costs. And he doesn't talk fast enough. Speed Racer in the cartoon, he's just nonstop so fast that you can't even hear. Like I think I sent a meme to some of you guys on the Discord that we have, and like Speed Racer's just like yammering on like super fast, but like, hey, stop crying, we got stuff to do, like super quick.
I didn't get that from Emil Hirsch though. Emil Hirsch was just like, okay, where was that energy in this movie? I didn't see it, but maybe I missed something.
The energy was everybody else. No, seriously. Even what is it? Spittle? The little kid, the brother.
Oh, the brother?
Spidle. Yeah, he was talking fast like how he does in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Because everybody else does. And even Royalton, he was like a very fast talker. Like
That's the bad guy, right?
The bad guy, yeah.
Bad guy.
He was a fast talker.
Yeah, he was such a mustache twirling villain. He's like, I'm going to make you sign this contract or I ruin your family. I'm like, bro, calm down. Chris, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it back to Arnie, the baddie racer, and your original question of like the nuance of this movie. And I think it comes down to the decisions that were made to influence whether it be the actors and what's actually on screen and how they're executing it. So like what we're talking about specifically with like the acting choice, right? The acting choice of like, we're going to play this straight and it's going to be really grounded and rooted. And in a lot of ways that contrasts so much to like the action and the over top essence of like what the action lived didn't necessarily match like the acting, right? And so like that's when it's not so, it's like slapstick action with like solid grounded acting, and so like in some ways like that nuance of like if you pick up on it, like it's really talking about like what's important, and they really kind of drive in like, hey, while this movie is big and beautiful and lots of action and packed, like this, we're talking about some serious themes, and that kind of like ties into like the nuance of like what we're talking about, like the reason I don't think the bad guy pays off well, especially with the younger audiences, is that we're talking about corporate greed and politics,
corruption.
It's the Star Wars prequels problem. Pod racing, politics. Lightsaber fights, politics.
Yeah.
Sword fights,
trade wars.
At the same time,
kids don't
though,
give a shit about that. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, there's politics in like all of our sports and media. Anything and
That's
everything
true.
is
everything
politics
is political.
based.
Everything is political.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
Or take
Jessica?
a movie that's
apparently
perfect.
taking a knee is political.
Well-
you know,
Well, that's the thing too. Like with this movie, there's a very purposeful intent to do anti-capitalist politics.
And I want to talk about that because that I did gather that a little bit.
When you're saying anything can be political, be political. It could be whatever what you're looking for. It could be sexual. It could be I don't know. Go ahead, Jessica.
Just like
Why
Arnold.
sexual?
Just Arnold's
Why
like
sexual?
looking for that all the time.
Yeah, well, his chat is asking him this. He's just living vicariously through them. Sorry, Jessica.
You know,
go ahead.
okay.
Adrian. You subscribe. That's what they're asking.
Actually, hey, that's between us. Go ahead, Jessica.
But yeah, I was gonna say when it comes to the capitalist storyline of it and the mustache twirling villain, I don't know. For me, like that happens in kids movies all the time though, right? Like we do see, like you said, like Star Wars or even like Space Jam. Like there is sort of this like corporate greed plot lines that are within kids movies. So it's not the first to do it, but I think it might be the fact that it's so like heavy-handed.
Yeah.
That maybe that's where it's sort of not hitting, but like heavy-handed would work in this sort of universe. So I don't know why it doesn't exactly like feel streamlined or like it's a little shoehorned in here.
It's kind of like it comes down to, in my opinion, right? What do I actually know? But it comes across for me, at least, in the execution of how it's being delivered. Of like, yeah, you could talk about corporate greed, but if your audience is for kids, right, you're not going to deliver a soliloquy that's like nuanced in how the delivery is. Like, I just think about that scene between Speed Racer and him, and he's going on and on and on and on and on, like sniffing his own farts and like doing his whole scheme. And again, because it's so rooted and grounded, he's trying to like play it real. Like, kids don't want to see that. They want to see him go like, like, why aren't you doing this? Like, kids like that weird slapstick type of stuff. Like, that's what they react to. And like, so that's why I think it's just so weird, because you can't, like, to your point, you can't do it. Star Wars did it. That's a wonderful example that you both brought up. And you see how here it just kind of like lands flat with both adult and kids audiences, because it's like, what are you trying to do here? Like, are you educating us? Are you like, what's the point?
When you try to educate everyone, you educate no one. You know what I mean, Alex?
I'll drink to that.
But to be fair, they like the film that they did previously to this was V for Vendetta. So
was that the Wachowskis?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
So if they're already in that world
movie.
of like talking about like politics and anti-fascism, that's where they've been the past few
Matrix
years.
as
So
well.
like to put that into the writing of the story of like their next film, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, Jessica.
Yeah, I think it like definitely belongs here. Like it does make sense, especially like you said with their previous work. Like it absolutely makes sense that they would include that kind of commentary. But I think your point about like going back to Emile Hirsch being so serious might be why kids don't resonate with it. And I'm not saying it's like good or bad that he was muted, because I kind of, while watching it, was wondering if he was kind of going for like almost like a everyman sort of portrayal. Like, I'm just a guy and the whole world around me is crazy. But it again felt like too quiet. Like it felt like he was Into the Wild thrown into Speed Racer. Like he just felt like, I don't know, like I kind of wanted to see a lead that was at least seeming like he was having fun with it, or like happy to be there, and like, hey, we all got bills to pay. I don't blame Emile Hirsch for taking a big budget, but it's sort of like, do you hate it here? Because I don't know if you're happy to be here, my guy.
Yeah. Just to clarify, the Wachowskis wrote and produced V for Vendetta, and James McTeague directed it. But I mean, still, like, what a fucking great. I love that movie so much, Chris.
Yeah, I think like to that point, some of the best villains, right? When we're talking about the big baddie in the movie, the main star, right? When they're enjoying themselves truly through and through, it makes it easier to hate them, and they have a very clear point of view. And when they kind of play it real, like, I'm just another person and this is just how the world works, and like places the blame on just like the system instead of themselves. And again, it takes the fun out of it. It's like the kids don't care about that the system's fucked up. Like they just want to see the guy be a dick, and they
not with that attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, Healing After Powers in the chat. Healing After Powers says John Goodman as a dad was a badass. The scene with the ninjas gets me every time. Roger Allen is just that kind of villain. He said ninjas, but maybe he misspelled it.
The nonjas.
The nonjas. Is that what I'm... Okay.
No, it was the joke.
Yeah.
You missed
Oh,
it.
John
gotcha.
Goodman said, yeah.
I'm devoid of humor tonight.
I get you, Justin. I get you.
Yeah.
I actually
The
remember
Smurfs, HLP says the Smurfs was political. What was the political edge on the Smurfs? I don't remember that. What was that?
they're blue.
They're
One.
they're
Dee
just
Da Ba
sad all
Die,
the
I
time.
think.
I mean, yeah, there are nuances to this movie. It just felt to me like, and I think Chris touched on this as well, which is like, are you doing a movie with like nuance about this sort of stuff towards adults, but also trying to balance that with like fun stuff for the kids? Like, I just feel like that there was a little imbalance there.
You know, we mentioned about John Goodman. Susan Sarandon. I thought she was a great mom in there. She played a great mom in there. But I mean, saw her recently at Coachella. Couchella.
She was at Coachella?
Yeah, she was on Sabrina Carpenter's set
that's
on
right.
Weekend One. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sabrina Carpenter, that's the blonde girl?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm old,
One-
so I don't
one
know
of
who these
many.
people are. I hear
One of
Chapel
many.
Ronan and I hear Sabrina Carpenter, and I'm like,
Well,
I don't know who
they're
these
not
people are.
blonde.
Chapel
Get
Ronan?
educated.
Is she
Chapel
Japanese?
Ronan. That's right, yeah.
You mean the new
So-
TMNT movie? Never
No,
mind.
I don't know what that
Anyway.
is.
Chapel Ronan is a former samurai.
That's the Pink Pony Club girl.
I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
it is Chapel Roan. No.
Chapel Roan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. That's
See?
why I
There you go.
was trying to give just Adrian shit, but.
Anyways,
Chris.
speaking of
Thank
the
you, Chris.
nuances,
Thank you, Chris.
If it came out before 2008, I don't know what it is. Go ahead, Justin.
no, so like to kind of go back and talk a little bit about like the gap in between, like you're saying, some of you guys are saying like the story is a little bit everywhere. I feel I disagree a little bit. I feel like it has a very consistent storyline from beginning to end, although it's chopped in such a way that it's very like fast paced and sporadic. But I do feel, and I think this is a thing that we can all agree on, I do feel that there is a large chunk of the movie where it just kind of like it kind of holds itself back just ever so slightly, and that's when he starts to go talk to like Royalton, and there's this just huge gap of just nothing really happening. It's just story, plot, but at the same time it's kind of sort of in this moment holding my hand, telling me like, oh, this in excruciating detail, all of this is happening, this is why. And at the same time, I like appreciate the movie for doing that, because it gives a little bit more of a reason. It gives these scenarios that Speed has to overcome along with his girlfriend Trixie and his family. And Speed Racer is in this moment where he's like, he's growing up, getting older. He's starting to like break away from home a little bit, and he's thinking to himself, maybe I am being held back by my family. Maybe I should be taking this offer from Royalton, even though he can obviously see that there's some like scandal going on. He's kind of doing it, for the sake of his family. At the same time, he kind of wants to go off and do his own thing. So there's like this huge section of the movie where he's in this strange conflict within himself. It's just a gap of information. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I wish they would I wish they did cut that section down a little bit, especially because this movie is so fast paced. I wish they uncut gems to this movie. I think this movie should have been what Uncut
This is
Gems
how I win.
is. Yeah, exactly. But I think I could see where that kind of drops off for some people, because I do think we have a solid opening. I think we kind of have a little lesser than mid section of the film, and then we have a banger of a closeout. In my opinion, I think that movie ended so fucking spectacularly. But we can talk about that in a little bit.
What does Logan Roy say in Succession? You want to hear my favorite part of Shakespeare? Take the fucking money. I love that moment. Alex, you had something?
I was just going to agree with Justin. I do feel that section where he's like, it does feel very hand-holdy, where they're explaining like, this is what's going to happen to you. I mean, it's a necessary point, and to kind of, and I feel like it's kind of like for the kids. Like I think that's what the Wachowskis were thinking, like, oh, this is gonna help the kids understand what's going on. And I do feel like they maybe they don't really understand making a children's film per se. But at the same time, I do feel like their strengths, like that they were talking about, like the whole James Joyce thing. Like James Joyce is like known for like just being a very complicated, like they make he writes run-on sentences that completely abandon narrative. They're very, very rich, and like, but a lot of my friends who have gone into literature, they told me like, yeah, there's actually literal books, textbooks to help you understand what James Joyce is trying to say. And I think that is kind of one of those things where this movie is like, okay, you kind of have to like understand the source material, and then you have to understand the mindset of the Wachowskis, of what they're trying to accomplish. And then you're like, it's just this hodgepodge of information that you have to come with to understand like what they're trying to get. Like I watched this twice just because like I enjoyed the movie the first time, and I was like, I feel like I missed some things. Let me watch it again. And so I watched it again because like I said, I enjoyed it, but two, I think it's one of those films that like if you enjoyed it the first time, you can get more and more out of it, even though it is should be like a children's film that's a little bit more simplistic in its approach. But like, here's the thing: you watch Up. That movie is so good. Wall-E. That movie is like a classic. Like you watch that more and more, and you get more out of those. So that shouldn't negate the ability to rewatch it and gain more things out of a film just because it's a children's film.
I'm glad you bring that up because tomorrow premiering on Disney Plus, Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, based on the 8,000-page novel. Hunter Burns would appreciate that reference, but he's not here tonight. Chris, you had something?
Yeah, interesting points. But and not to put you on the spot, Jessica, but from like when you're watching that, you sort of talked about how like the narrative's all over the place, and we just talked about like the middle of this movie being like the real issue, right? Because it starts off strong, it finishes at least fast, and bright and showy. What about the middle of this movie or the narratives that when you're watching that or after the fact that is like itching at your brain, like, oh man, if only they would have done this. Or if you were God of this movie, right, what would you have done?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a really good question. I think for me, and I want to say, I do like this movie. I know I'm being very critical about it, but I do overall enjoy it. And I think for me, there is a lot of characters that we don't need in every single scene. And I feel like sometimes, again, because the visuals are so big and so grand and there's so much going on, I feel like a lot of the story can get lost in these bigger group scenes. Because like Christina Ricci, for example, love her. I love her so much. I think she's fantastic. A lot of the time in this movie, she's just kind of silently there and then will say like a sentence. And then I get sort of distracted by like, oh yeah, what's her deal? Oh yeah, going back to her for a second. I just remembered she's still here. Or like I don't know. And I will say, I also watched this twice and I still am like, I don't know if I got everything. The mechanic guy, is that also like a brother or is that just like a family friend?
He called John Goodman Pops at one point.
Okay.
That's their uncle,
but everyone
yeah.
calls him Pops.
Oh.
Okay.
No, everyone
Right?
calls him
Calls him
Pops, but
Pops.
that what's his name? Fuck, I forget his name. But that's
Right. I
that's-
forgot his name too.
Great value
Sparky.
Walton Goggins.
That's
Sparky, yes,
uncle,
yes.
Uncle
Okay,
Sparky,
that's an uncle.
yeah.
Okay, because that was another one where like he would say a sentence and I'd be like, wait, who's this? What is his deal? What's his backstory? Did we get that? I don't think we did. And so I think like that is something that I would probably have done differently, is not necessarily like cut people, but like be a little more strategic with like who's in what scene when and when we are bouncing between different plot lines with them, because then we'll spend a lot of time with a lot of characters and then we won't see them for a really long time. And then they'll come back at the end, and it was like, oh yeah, what was going on there? I kind of forgot. How did we get here with this person? I don't remember. Like, there's just a lot of people in this already really big world that it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, Arnold and then Justin. Go ahead, Arnold.
Just a lot of the stuff that was going on, like visually, like there's so much going on in the background. It made me feel like I was walking into the exhibit hall at Comic-Con. You have so much. It's like overload of
Overstimulated. You're overstimmy.
I completely agree.
And then you have like a face. You're looking at all the stuff, and then you have somebody walk by like, oop, oh, excuse me, oh, yep, and then you have like, like all these different. What do you call that? That type of
overstimulation.
No, like how they did in the movie.
Oh,
like, where they would show their faces.
Yeah, they just had a lot of very, very smooth smooth is social construct. They had a lot of transitions between not just every scene, but every moment, and that,
are you talking about,
worked for me in a lot of ways.
Are you talking about when they would show like the reactions of like the characters to like the certain, like the race and everything?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Right, like the race, or I don't even know.
I think you mean like when it was actually used as like an editing swipe. So that's like when the person is the swipe.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of like instead of having like the camera swap back and forth between like faces, it's when like their faces going across the screen, they're still talking, but they're still in that scene. I think that would be considered a transition, right?
Yeah, that is a transition.
That would be a transition swipe.
I mean, I thought it was pretty
Which
cool.
I thought really cool. I thought that was such a cool technique.
I thought it was too cool that I got caught up in that and then didn't realize what was going on.
My favorite moment of that was when the bad guy, whose name I'm forgetting right now, he was telling Racer the whole thing. He's like telling him like, this is what it's going to happen if you don't sign the contract. And as it's approaching the end of his monologue, it starts like fast swooshing to Racer in the car racing, because that's what he does. And the way that segued into that, I thought was brilliant visually. And,
E.P. Arnold Royalton?
Yeah. DP, Director of Photography. We won't get into all that. Justin, you had something?
No, I was going to go back to like the family stuff and them all being in the scene. I think for more or less, like when it comes to Trixie is the supporting girlfriend of Racer. She's so dedicated. Even in the TV show, the animated series, she was very dedicated to Speed. Like they had a very healthy relationship. As far as like the family goes, this is more of like, if you're familiar with the show, you're familiar with like who's who, and everybody's in the scene all the time in the TV show for the most part. Unless Speed is racing, then more or less he's solo, or he has Spriddle and Chim Chim in the backseat in his trunk doing like dastardly things, getting in trouble and things like that. But other than that, like whenever like Speed is not racing, he's always there with his family, and that just shows that they're very family oriented group of people.
They're very family dedicated people.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and it's cool because they're all like supporting each other in their own way. But I also think that's like a plot point that plays into like how Speed feels, or how his brother was feeling in that way too, of being like, oh, maybe I should grow up, and I should break off of family oriented activities.
Yeah. Jessica?
I love the analogy that you had for walking through the exhibit hall of Comic-Con and being overly stimulated. And I think that like really summarizes what I've like been wanting to say really well, because it's like you're doing that. Like you just walked in the exhibit hall and you're like, oh my God, everything is so cool. I love being here. This is so exciting. And then your friend is right next to you trying to tell you a story. That's sort of how it feels with the plot sometimes, where if it was like, girl, just leave that part out. I'm really distracted by everything right now. Like, I can't really focus on all your stories right now. I'm so sorry. Like, I enjoy being there, but like, I need you to be a little quiet because I'm trying to take all this in. Like, and I really liked this movie a lot, but the visuals was what made it so special. That's where it's like, if we just simplified the plot a little bit more and we could just be in this world and then not feel overwhelmed when we're like, oh, I was just looking at that transition. What did I miss? Because I was focused on like this really cool visual and I feel like I missed something. But again, that also could go back to the fact that I never watched the series. So like you were saying, like having all these characters in every scene is very much of the show. Like that's something I didn't know. So that again could just be like my perception of why I'm like this feels overwhelming because I didn't come in with that context already. So
Yeah.
that just could be me personally. I mean, I personally love the fact that the Wachowskis like were given millions and millions of dollars and just did whatever they want and like didn't really care what anyone thinks. Like that's pretty awesome. But at the end of the day, when I'm watching it, I'm still like, I don't really. I'm a little lost, guys. I don't know.
I agree. And you know what? My ADHD ass can only handle so much. Like if I walk into a grocery store and I see 30 different types of spaghetti, bro, I don't need 30 different choices for spaghetti. Give me 1, 2 max, and that's it. Like, and this movie had 30 choices of spaghetti.
That's why you go to Trader Joe's.
Doesn't this movie have like a warning at the beginning of it saying that it may potentially, at least I think I got it when I
didn't
like
see
got
it.
the movie. It was like, oh, this movie may potentially have like visual overstimulating
overstimulating,
images or something like that. I get it. I think for me, I think the visuals satisfy the stims for me. But as far as I will say, this movie should probably have a stim warning at the
clipping
beginning, especially for modern generations. I'd be like, okay, if you love visual, extravagant, flashing colors and lights and things just fucking happening the whole time, then this stim is for you. Otherwise, it's fucking not. You're not going to stim very well off
This
of this.
or Lawnmower Man.
No,
know what I'm
Lawnmower
saying?
Man is a personal stim of mine.
Chris?
Yeah, like just to add on to that, like we're talking about like the filming, and like Arnie, you kind of touched on it as well, as far as like between the different transitions and the actual graphics that are on screen. So like by design, when they filmed this movie, if you like watch it for a third time, you'll notice that everything's in focus at all times. And so like that was like by design, because like they did spend so much money on like making a really good
focus.
good. See, exactly. And
Did I
that's
just
why
see
this
Kim
movie-
Kardashian go across Arnold's screen? What was that? Okay.
and
Sir,
so
that was Selena.
Everything for Selena. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're good. I mean, this is exactly what was happening during the entirety of the movie.
Yeah. Just Selena, shinging her way across
So everything's in focus, and that way, like at any point, like whether you tune out from actually listening to what's happening, if you were to like appreciate what's happening in the background, like these are like really beautiful sets that they're putting behind it, and then like the talking about like the graphics and the transitions, that just plays into, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a manga of this of this series.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I compare it to Scott Pilgrim's, because there is so much happening, not only visually but musically in that movie, and they're able to take it one scene by one scene and thread it all the way through where you're not like completely overwhelmed. You're able to digest it all. And this movie just like didn't give you that opportunity, which is why you almost have to watch it multiple times to be able to like, oh, this was an all-you-can-eat buffet, and you just like the conveyor belt never stops. Like it's an I Love Lucy scene where you're just like eating chocolate. And you're just like,
That
"Oh,
is
I don't know.
That is a great point. And there was an emotional through line to this movie, which was the brother that passed away earlier in the story. And I have to ask, and Justin, I'll start with you really quick. Racer X, was he the brother, or was that supposed to be ambiguous? I'm still not clear on that.
Oh my!
As he face palms his way through this answer.
Yeah, face palm indeed. His brother died during that race that Pops didn't want Racer to go to, because it's like, hey, your brother died there. Yeah, that was absolutely his brother. Racer X is his brother.
But why did he not tell him in the end? Why did he not admit to it? I'm not clear on that arc. Like, why didn't he tell him?
To protect him.
Yeah, to protect his family, because he is wanted by like very bad people. Like he was trying to probably do a similar deal to like Royalton and whatnot. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I may be. This is me interpreting it, but made a bad deal with Royalton. Wanted to get out of said contract. Didn't want to be bound to this guy. He made a mistake. and he decided that the best way out was to fake his own death, fake his own funeral, get a complete rhinoplasty.
Right.
It's also
Yeah.
it's also the stereotypical superhero trope. To become a superhero, you kind of have to hide who you are in order to protect your loved ones. And so in order for him to protect his loved ones, he couldn't remain like, I guess he went so far. I don't know if that's the same thing. They probably created that like storyline of like him getting plastic surgery they obviously did for the movie. But in the cartoon, he's just this superhero. He's just kind of this guy who does the things that Speed Racer can't do. He's like fights. He actually fights the bad guys who are in the back, like doing the really, really nefarious things where Speed Racer is the guy who just races in the cartoon. But like, so in this movie, he's like a skilled Racer X is a skilled fighter who could like beat up ninjas, obviously, and can like, detect whether he's like gonna be there's assassination attempts on their family.
Yeah, and in the show, and I know this is like beating a horse to death, whatever. But in the show, it's like he's always kind of there in the background, even though he's made out to be this kind of villain type of guy. He's always in the background saving Speed. But Speed just, most of the time, Speed thinks, just another race. Everything's golden and good. But most of the time, it's Racer X who's actually defending him and keeping him from dying by these guys that want to kill Speed Racer for being the best racer of all time.
Racer X needs a good lawyer. That's what he needs. I mean, he needs to go through. The guy had like 30 contracts sitting on the coffee table in front of Speed Racer at one point. And I'm like, surely the Speed Racer has the wherewithal to hire a lawyer to read through all this. No? Or is that the one part of the movie that's just not even a factor? Like, somebody has to have lawyers. Like, in this world,
Come on.
You have a lawyer, an accountant, and an agent. And maybe a PR person.
They're poor, dude. They're poor. Come on.
That's a good point, yeah. I did not think about that. Okay.
They're poor, but they can build a car in 32 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, Justin, let me ask you this, and this question is mostly only for you.
Don't you want to ask Jessica first?
Well, I'll go around the room. F1, starring Brad Pitt. Is that a low-key remake of Speed Racer? What do we think, Justin?
I never watched F1 because I'm not interested.
You're not missing much.
But I would say no. I would say
okay.
Speed Racer stands alone and is inspiration for everything else. F1 is just trying to be a serious movie to... it's just one big ad for that type of racing that I'm not interested in. Yeah.
Jessica, what do you think? F1, Secret Speed Racer remake, or am I going way...
I think that notion is just as crazy as F1 being nominated for Best Picture. But what I was going to say, when it comes to the brother at the end, I thought, or who I think is the brother, I guess it's ambiguous. I think it's his brother. And I think one of the reasons why he doesn't reveal himself is not only for protection, but also to sort of live with the consequences of his own actions. Kind of like, I was the one that got myself in this bad deal. It would be really selfish of me if I told my family who I was. Like, I have to live with what I've done. So it wasn't only protection, it's also no, this is what I've chosen to do. I cannot do that. And that to me was that was really upsetting to me. That really hurt me. I hated that. But I also was curious, again, as a non-show watcher, in the show, is that his brother? Or I know you guys kind of talked about it. He's in the background. Do we know as the audience, if we watch the show, that that's his brother who faked his death?
So I know that there was an animated Speed Racer thing that came out that I didn't watch. I believe it was an animated movie of some sort. And throughout the TV show, I don't think I made it that far because 50-something episodes is a lot, and I don't have the attention span for 50-something episodes. But I know throughout the show that he's always kind of remained just this trope mystery type of guy where he swings in at the right time, saves the day, but Speed Racer or whoever else takes credit for what Racer X does. I think he is revealed at some point that it's his brother, but I think he just kind of remained the, the mystery behind the scenes, save the day type of guy.
Alex?
So I just wanted to read off what HLP says. All-time family business against mega corporations, money versus talent. That makes a lot of sense. Like why they didn't have a lawyer. I don't know how many small businesses can have a lawyer on retainer.
They also didn't have ChatGPT to hit up about law questions.
Exactly. And then too, like he absolutely was his brother. They reveal it in the movie. Like there's, I don't know how you could have missed that, but
I'm just asking the questions. You know what I mean?
I know you are.
I kept waiting for him to do. Remember the Masked Magician in the early 2000s, and he took off the mask, and he's like, "It is I." And I kept waiting for Matthew Fox to do that, and I was like, "Yeah, who the fuck are you again?"
Well, no, like
if this was a true kids movie, they would have done that.
It was she said exactly what he says in the movie. He's like, I'm doing this to live with my consequences. He says in the movie, I can't really say it verbatim, but it was like the FBI agent asks him if he wants to go downstairs with the rest of the family, and then you see him pause, and then he asks him, he's all, no, I'm not going to go down there. He's like, do you regret ever not revealing yourself? He's like, well, if I do, this is just something, again, like what Jessica said. He says it verbatim in the movie, like, I have to live with this consequence.
Yeah. Justin?
I just did a quick little research, and yes, at some point in the 1967 animated series, Rex Racer revealed himself in an episode, specifically the episode called The Trick Race. Racer X reveals himself, was it privately to Speed, revealing that he's his brother. So I'm just not entirely sure which episode that is, how far that is, but that episode in particular, yeah, he was revealed in the show as his brother.
Gotcha.
I'm your brother.
Well,
The
I was gonna say,
brothers.
was Trixie in the cartoon?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
And her and the funny thing is her flying. She was actually, flying in the helicopter for the most part, or sitting in what do they call, like the spotters. So the helicopter is a spotter thing, and then she also, there's like episodes where she'd be in like the stands and she'd be a spotter as well. Trixie is more or less Speed Racer spotter. And that's an actual racing thing. They have spotters in racing. Yeah, so
not drones now.
Maybe they do drones now. I feel like that'd be a little bit more difficult to spot somebody. But when I don't know how many of you have been to a racetrack before. I'm white, so anyway,
I've been to a racetrack, but I've never seen a race. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So kind of like what you do when you're like filming certain events where you're like high up on a tower and things like that. It's similar to that, except they're above like the announcer's booth. And they're on top of this platform, and not all places do this, but some of them will have this platform on the top. And if you are like sitting in the stands and you turn around and look up, you'll see people hanging over, and be like, "Oh, they got good seats." No, those are actually the spotters who are making sure that they're not going to die when they're racing. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
But they know the layout of the track ahead of time, right? I mean, they know what they're getting into.
Yes, but they also, we, like us regular vehicle drivers, we have the privilege of having rear view and side view mirrors, and now we have like cameras and stuff like that on our cars. When you're in a race car, none of that is there. You don't have any of that. Maybe a rear view mirror, maybe, but those things are actually dangerous, especially if you get into an accident. So, really? You have to have a spotter because you can't see who's to the right of you, you can't see who's to the left of you, and most of the time you can't see who's behind you. So you need that person to tell you, hey, it's okay for you to, advance forward, or hey, you got somebody on your left or right, or you got someone tailing you, because it's more or less like a safety thing.
And so they're like on the mic in their ear?
Yeah, and that's what they have those mics for and everything. Yeah.
They did that in F1. They had like 4 guys talking to Brad Pitt.
Yeah, so I'm just mansplaining now. Yeah. Thanks a lot for that, guys.
I need to rewatch this with my kid. I think my kid would like this movie.
Yeah.
And I may just do that. As soon as I can find a non-pirated version of this, I'm gonna watch it with my kid.
Just get the steelbook for $39.99
$39 in this economy, my friend. I don't know
on May
about that.
19th.
Or if you watch it on Howdy, it's a plug-in on Amazon. They got a free trial. That's how I watched
7-day
it.
free trial.
That's how I watched it. Tried to watch it 3 times.
That's an unpaid plug, by the way. We're not getting any money from Howdy, so don't even start with that. You know what I mean? For those of you listening.
Howdy.
The movie is Speed Racer, for those of you joining us. We're on the radio now, guys, on KLOS 105.1, the desert's leader in smooth listening. No, but Arnold, I have a question for you really quick, Arnold.
Okay, I'm turning on my brain.
Okay, thank you, because you need to for this. At what point does the Mach 5 stop being a car and become an extension of Speed's fractured inner child, screaming into the void of the late-stage capitalism, Arnold?
I believe it was in 1969. If I'm
Yeah. On April 20th, 1969, right?
Chat, what do you guys... There's
What
a
is the
bunch
chat?
of those dots.
Yeah, your chat's been quiet tonight, by the way, Arnold. What's going on with that?
I mean, because I haven't been sharing a lot of the stuff that they're saying. There's like, no, more Christina Ricci. Oh, hey, I bet Susan Sarandon.
What's Susan Sarandon looking very youthful in this movie? I was shocked. I was like, is that Susan Sarandon? Oh, holy moly. She was just looking, I just forgot how young she was in 2008. You know what I mean?
I know, she was 61 back then. Not
that you looked it up, right? Yeah. I was more worried about John Goodman. I was like, oh, look at John Goodman. You know what I mean? John Goodman. But anyway.
I wanted to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when she was making them. I was like, because the whole time during the movie, I was like, I was wanting to grab something to eat, but then I was like, ooh, I'm going to finish this movie by 6:29 and we're recording the podcast at 6:30.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I didn't.
All right, guys. All right, gang. I should say that's the movie. That's Speed Racer. I think it's about that time. And I have a question. I want to go around the room, and I'll start with you, Jessica. Do you think this movie would have? We're at the hour mark, so don't mind Arnold. Do you think this movie would have succeeded in 2026?
I think it has more of a chance of succeeding now than it did back in 2008. And here's why. I think it was ahead of its time in that it did attempt to be almost both a big budget movie. I'm just going to keep going. A big budget movie.
Please, just cover your screen like this.
It was both like a huge big budget blockbuster and like an art house movie. Like it really did try to be both things. And I think back in 2008, people were not really open to that. I forgot who was saying it, but there was also like a marketing issue with this film. And I think especially back then, people wouldn't know how to market film. One of my favorite films around that time, I don't think it was quite 2008, I think maybe it was 2009, was Jennifer's Body, which was very well known for how horribly that was marketed. And people came thinking they were going to see one thing and saw another. But it just sort of like Speed Racer, those who got it and loved it. And I think nowadays people would be more open to something that took a lot of risks, that was different, that also had that little bit of nostalgia, but was also just there to like have a really good time. Like that's what this is. It's a very big, boisterous, campy kind of movie that I think if it was marketed as just that, like this is going to be a crazy time. Visuals are going to be insane. And if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you don't. I think more audiences would like it now than they would have. But if it was made in 2026, this would just unfortunately be like a Netflix movie that would be number one, you know?
I need to see Jennifer's Body because it looks like it's just, this is just a horny movie with Megan Fox, but it's more than that. Right?
It's so much more than that. See, you fell victim to the marketing.
I really did.
They got you. They got you.
Can we lock you in, Jessica, for Jennifer's Body on this show?
Please, please, I would love that.
Fantastic.
That's with Megan Fox?
Yes, sir. And Amanda Seyfried.
Yep, it's so good. It's on Netflix now. Oh, I'll be here for it. Absolutely.
Next week,
get a bottle of champagne and a coffee.
Let's just lock it in.
Let's lock it in. I'm so down.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Jessica. Where can people find you, by the way? And please, whatever you want to plug, whatever you want to talk about really quick.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm sorry I was so critical about Speed Racer.
No.
But I tend to be very critical, even about things I love. I tend to like
No apologies, because that's what this discussion's for. Yeah.
Exactly. But overall, I loved it. I thought the visuals, I had such a good time watching it, and I had a good time chatting with you guys about it. So thank you again for having me on. You can follow me on Instagram at JustQuaz. That's usually where I'm the most active. I'm also launching a YouTube channel soon where I'll do like long form videos about pop culture and movies. My first one is going to be about Euphoria and all the drama that surrounds that show. I got a lot to say about Sam Levinson. I have a lot of takes. So you can catch me on YouTube where I'll be soon. And thank you guys again for having me.
I have nothing going on, so if you want to get me on to talk about Euphoria,
okay,
by all means, I will talk about Euphoria.
But I'd be on that show too. I love Euphoria.
Yeah,
I'm loving this season so far.
Okay, you're one of the very few that is. I gotta say, not a lot of people are loving this season.
I like guilty pleasure trash, high level television, which that show is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, definitely.
No, but thank you seriously for being on, and we appreciate you. And let's do Jennifer's Body.
I would love that. I will be here.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's a done deal. Chris, Mr. Milkman America. Do you think this movie would survive today, Chris? Give me your take.
I think it would do better. I mean, part of the reason why they're doing like the not remake, but like they're juicing this movie up is because it was restricted by when it came out. It was so ahead of its time that it didn't have the tech and sound design to deliver on what it was mainly supposed to be about. And so I think it would do slightly better. I think it's still held captive by I think a really messy story and not knowing what its audience is. So I mean, if they were to tighten both of those things up and made it for a specific audience and was able to put like the firepower this movie deserves, then yeah, sure, I think it would do great. But if you just like released it as is today, no, I think it would still flop.
Well, people would be hamming it up because they're like, oh, it's the Wachowskis, man. It's the Wachowskis. They made The Matrix. We got to go see Speed, right? The nostalgia factor alone, I think, would get butts in seats.
Butts and seats. That's all we're worried about these days. Come to the movies. Watch. So I would give this movie a 2 out of 5. I thought there was so much to like. And
what was the Chick-fil-A girl?
There was so much to like about this movie, but it just didn't know where to land or how to land the plane. Like it just, I went through a lot of turbulence. I went through a lot of G-force around that track, and I didn't know what I was supposed to get from it. And I didn't watch it twice. I think that if you don't do it on the first time, you miss the point. And now you're just giving me homework to appreciate what you were trying to deliver. So, I know it's a little harsh, but they're seriously really good at what they do. It just didn't come together for me in this package. So 2 out of 5. And Milkman America, anywhere and everywhere.
Your homework is to write me a 300-character think piece on Speed Racer and why it doesn't work.
You got it.
If you want to be part of this show, you have to, write us some think pieces there, Chris.
No, but thank you.
You hear that, Arnold? You got to write something.
Arnold. Yeah, ChatGPT, my friend. No,
you got that, guys on the chat. ChatGPT. All right, help me out.
We'll get it done.
I was not on.
Neverseenit.blog.com. No. Justin, would this movie survive today? What are your thoughts? Where can people find you?
I think Speed Racer would absolutely survive today. If we have like the technology that we have now compared to then, which it's not really that far off, but the significant changes in technology would probably benefit this movie significantly, because this still looks fucking green screen, blue screen, whatever. It obviously looks like it was filmed on a screen. But I think this movie, besides that, if you're able to just take that mind out of your head and just be like, okay, appreciate it for its face value for what it is. This movie is visually stunning. This movie has so much going on. Like I like some of the things, I'm like looking at it, I'm like, how the fuck did they do that with what the technology they had back then? Half of it I don't understand. Like we were talking about the transitions. I don't think I've really seen any other movie do anything similar. Maybe close, but they were just so
Scott
balls to the
Pilgrim.
wall. Scott Pilgrim, yeah, I still think hate me for it. I don't care. I love Scott Pilgrim. I think this movie just did it a little bit better.
Maybe Rocky.
And I think it was Rocky, maybe Rocky. I don't know. Maybe Rocky might beat out everything, you know. Anyway, I'm just joking. I think this movie is visually stunning. I think the transitions are incredible. I think the story, you know, I personally think it's easy to follow. And you know what? I will say I do agree on the topic of that. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have to do your research or know the show prior to seeing something that probably most people would have never watched before and probably will never watch. So having a little bit more of a clear-cut direction for, you know, the characters and story plot, and instead of expecting your audience to be like, hey, you should probably know this, like, oh, you don't know this, and then making them like pay for it, and I can see how it's just not there for some people in that aspect. But as far as like longevity goes, for it being a 2008 movie, I still think it looks fantastic. It's unique. I don't think I've seen anything like it. Like you said, Scott Pilgrim, yeah, Ready Player One, maybe. Like those are all really good movies, but I think this is such a different and unique take on what they did, and whether it was inspired or inspired other films. I think it needs time. I think I heard it best where it's like this is one of those movies that if you're really stoned, this is going to be a great watch. Like if you're stoned, you're on fucking shrooms, I think you will have an even more fantastic of a time watching this film. I think all the characters were relatively solid. I think, you know, I have like a crush on Christina Ricci from like when I was a child.
Get in
So
line,
it's like
my friend.
Seeing
Get
Christina
in
Ricci.
line.
No, I'm first in line. I don't care.
After Susan Sarandon, right?
After everyone on this chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Susan
After John
Sarandon
Goodman.
from Rocky Horror Picture Show. Anyway, yeah, honestly, I had a really great time with it. I even found myself like, now that I have a better understanding of this film, watching it like the couple of times that I've seen it and like having a refresh on it, I found myself really enjoying the plot line of it. I really didn't have to think too much into it, only because, like, you know, I know where it's going. I know what's going on, and how it plays out. And I also found myself to be a little bit emotional at the end, because I feel like I'm like, man, like all these bad things are happening in this movie, and then, you know, we all know that Speed Racer is going to win regardless, but they do this in such a way that has a lot of build up to a point in time where I'm just like, I feel for these characters now. I'm so invested, and I just felt a little emotional near the end there. So maybe it's just me, but I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I will come back to it again and again. It has a lot of rewatchability for me, and I would love to see what they do with the remaster when it is re-released on 4K. I don't know what they're gonna do differently, because as far as I know, I just watched the standard digital version that was available to me. I unfortunately couldn't make it to the IMAX re-release, but I'm very excited to see what they're gonna add as far as, like, you know, updated, you know, graphics, maybe some behind the scenes stuff, and I would really love to see what they come up with on this next release.
And then, no, Speed Racer sequel. What do we think, Justin?
Yeah, on that tangent, Speed Racer sequel, I will say most of the cast is still alive today. I do think the kid that plays Spritle, probably too old to be Spritle at this point. I think that would be the only thing that I'm like, okay, well, if they're gonna age everybody significantly. Chim Chim's dead. I'm sorry to tell you guys. Chim died long ago. Chim Chim is dead. But if they have a new Chim Chim, you know, I'm sure they can train another monkey. No, I think a sequel would be amazing. I would love a sequel, but everybody will be significantly aged. I think the only one I think that doesn't age is Christina Ricci, and she would be the only one that probably doesn't look a
They all still got it. John Goodman has still got it. Susan
Don't get me
Sarandon
wrong.
still got it.
They
Yeah.
do. They all still
Yeah.
got their acting
I love
chops.
'em.
Even Emil Hirsch, I know he's like trying to
Well,
make a comeback in some shape or form. But
He got into a little bit of trouble, let's just say, a few years back. But yeah.
I'm unfamiliar with that. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, not to get too political.
It's not even political, but yeah.
Yeah. It was a joke. But yeah, I think it's deserving of a sequel. I wouldn't really know how they would go about it. My Letterboxd rating, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Pretty solid for me. You can follow me on Letterboxd, GhostNerd88. I also have social medias, GhostNerd88 as well. And anything else?
Justin, what you're passionate about, I'm passionate about. Let's just put it that way. You know what I'm saying?
How condescending.
No. You bring it to the show. You really do. Lawnmower Man was a highlight of this show. We should revisit that movie.
You guys still talk about it to this day.
And I never would have watched that if it hadn't been for you. So thank you. Thank you for that, Justin. Alex, what do you think? Speed Racer, would it have made it today? What do we think?
Probably not. With the updates to technology, maybe. It's just two different times. Like back then, it could survive off of DVD sales and DVD rentals if that was still going on. I think there was like a tail end of DVDs of Blockbuster and video rental as a major thing, driving force for aftermarket, after theater sales or whatever, proceeds, whatever. I think that if we're asking the honest question of like not changing a thing other than maybe like the technology, I don't think so. I think we're looking at a day and age where like the studios don't want to invest money. If it's going to be either like a $500 million movie or a $20 million movie, and Speed Racer was made for $120 million, which I don't know, adjusted for inflation. I didn't do the math, but it's still well under that 500 million. And I think that a lot of studios aren't willing to take risks on that sort of thing. I could see maybe a remake or a reboot of it being done in Japan, like doing a live action. And then, like you said, like maybe Netflix, because they are doing the One Piece TV show. They have that.
That's right.
But see, that's the thing. It's like you're completely redoing a lot of things with it. That being said, I with Justin, I agree with almost everything that you had to say, with the exception of the fact that you had to be aware or knowledgeable of the source material. I think they do a good job in this film of like talking about the characters and introducing the characters and not having to be familiar with the show. I think that they did a really great job with that. I think that they all stood alone as, like, you know, the characters were introduced. They didn't really the characters were what they were, and you didn't need to be like flipping through a book. That being said, that's also, you have that whole like kind of broken, you know, deconstructed narrative that I was talking about, and that does pose an obstacle for even today's audiences. They talk about how, like, in Pixar films, that, you know, they write a lot of their films now to for adults, and like a lot of kids aren't really into the newer Pixar films. They're not like how they were earlier Pixar films were, like Toy Story and like The Bug's Life. And those films were definitely, a lot of comedy was put into those films to satisfy adults, but there is also storytelling in it that helps keep kids engaged. Whereas this film, like I said, it tested poorly with children, and I think it's probably even worse now. I think it would be even worse for kids, because like it's almost not fast enough. Attention spans are like just too fast. I don't know. There's just like this thing where it's not syncing up at all with like the attention spans for kids today. But for me, I really enjoyed this film. I think that my David Lynchian fanboy brain really enjoys the broken up narratives. And like, to me, it was just it kind of was just like a normal, like, I agree with Justin. It was like it was easy to follow, like, to me. And, I gave this a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and you could find me at Daily Dares and all the socials.
Thank you, Alex, for that. And all great points. HLP, by the way, says that he thinks it would survive. He says, I think so. I mean, what is coming out now and even matching it visually, and for movies, you go for a visual experience. The cast are all legends. You have a monkey who is hilarious. Who the fuck does? Not like that. I would rather watch this than any of the Star Wars prequels. Probably more than anything of Star Wars, really. And I actually agree with you. And that's coming from a big Star Wars fan, by the way. That was visually more taking than Star Wars, and these races were better than the pod races. And I think HLP makes a great point. So thank you for that, HLP. We appreciate that, Arnold. And now it's that part of the show, my friend. And Jessica, this is my favorite part of the show. As you know, Arnold, I think it's that time to introduce the Arnold Snooze-o-meter. Yes. High production quality, only on Never Seen It podcast. Arnold, take it from here.
So I guess I'm learning that I still have a child's brain, because for me I found it very hard to follow. I had 3 attempts at watching this movie. I thought the first 2 attempts was because I watched it like late. I mean, it's NBA playoffs right now. I was watching the NBA playoffs, and so then so I started watching it late, close to 10 o'clock. I look at it, I'm like, oh gosh, a 2-hour-long movie, which, if you were to ask me, oh, what would you change, or I don't know, what would we do? Maybe
what
80 minute
today.
To me, maybe an 80-minute long version of this would be, like, this should really embrace the speed, like speed it up, like make it quick, Yeah. That would have been maybe better for me.
Right.
The other 2 nights I thought maybe, I just started watching it late. But today, I got out off of work a little bit early, because I was like, okay, it's crunch time, guys. I got to finish this. Even then, midday, no heavy meal.
No ice cream and beer?
No, all I had was my lunch earlier, like at noon. And I was actually starving. I was like, man, I'm hungry. So no food come. Even during the day, my wife was nudging me like, keep your eyes open. Watch. You're watching?
He's
like,
up.
Like for a good 5 minutes, she's like tapping me, like making sure. But then by then it's almost like rocking me to sleep, And so I found it. I just found it hard. And but star-studded cast is like I feel bad because like John Goodman, Emil Hirsch. I loved them in Alpha Dog, which was I think 2 years prior to this movie.
I've never seen it.
I love Emil Hirsch in Dangerous Lives of the Altar Boys.
Oh, never seen that either.
I've never seen that either.
Susan
How about
Sarandon,
A Girl
Christina
Next
Ricci.
Door?
Now that I've seen. Lucky guy. What was I saying? Now I'm stuck on Girl.
Your Z rating, yeah.
Z rating. So, okay. The Z rating, it grew and grew. It built up even more, like the snowball effect. It went from a 1.5 to today a 3 Z rating.
Wow.
Yeah, more and more. Well, Jessica, the more Z's, the more I fell asleep on the movie. A 0 Z rating is good, basically.
That is good.
But yeah, I mean, the Z rating, it grew. Like Monday night, it was a 1. I was like, oh, how are we gonna give this a 1? Yesterday it was like, oh, maybe a 2. And then I was hoping that today it would go down, that it would go down a little bit, but then it actually went up. And I feel bad because great cast, the people, the colors, the green screen of all that. I mean, it was a lot. I mean, back then, people in the chat, they're saying that they would take acid back in the days to see those kinds of colors, and that's what they would like. But I can't really relate because I didn't do that stuff.
You're a straight edge.
What was I saying?
I don't know anymore.
But oh yeah, this movie had a lot of those colors and stuff, and and oh yeah, like you said earlier, Justin, what a trip that would be. I mean, I can only imagine. The people in the chat are saying that for sure.
It's a nice road trip, yeah.
But my letterbox rating, which I really will try and actually put it on letterbox. I'm with you, Chris. A two stars, hearts, thumbs,
stars. Yeah.
I know.
Clovers.
Two clover rating. Hey man, are you messing with me?
Not at all.
That would be my rating on Letterboxd.
Nice. Where can people find you?
I'm Arnie Collego everywhere. You can find me.
Jessica, do you have a letterbox?
Yes, I do. I'm also at JustQuaz on Letterboxd. I didn't put this up on my Letterboxd yet. I kind of forgot, but
Hey, it's all good.
I would do 2.5, just right in the middle. So
It's okay,
sorry.
we all lie
Right in the
anyway.
middle.
I know.
Actually,
I apparently lie because I give a rating, but then if you go to my letterbox, you're like, hey, you said it was a 1. You said it was a 1.5. You said it was a 4.5, a 4.20,
Arnold's just a
whatever.
liar. So. He lies about a lot of stuff, lies about having a private chat, blah, blah, blah.
Whatever.
no, those are all true, right, Arnold?
That's right, Mr. BOOTZ Too Big. We're last but not least. What do you have to say?
I didn't hate this movie. I want to rewatch it with my kid. I feel like he would enjoy it. My only qualms with this movie is it's a little too long. I think the length of it does it a disservice. I think that if you had shaved off like 30 to 35 minutes max, you could have had a nice, tight story where you can have the depth of the corruption and the emotional thorough line of the dead brother, quote unquote dead brother, while still having the fun visual treat that is each and every racing scene, because the racing scenes were great. My biggest problem was that the racing scenes at the same time it was too digital. It was too green screen. It was too let's completely ignore the laws of physics and just do like this video game / anime feel to it. And it reminded me too much of Spy Kids. I understand that this movie came out during an era where filmmakers were like your Zack Snyders of the world and you're the Wachowskis. Robert Rodriguez were like, let's film everything in front of a green screen and call it a day. They did this movie in 60 days. 60 days, which if you know anything about Jessica, you would appreciate this. 60 days to film a feature-length movie is crazy. That's
crazy. I didn't realize that. That's insane to do all of this in 60 days.
It's ridiculous because most movies take way longer than that, and they still have to go back and do reshoots. But for this movie, they were like, green screen. Just green screen the whole fucking thing.
Dang.
And it's like, I get that, but at the same time, you got to pick one lane or the other. You got to pick let's do some campiness and with a little bit of an emotional through line, or let's do like a story about anti-capitalism, corruption, but you can't really balance both equally that well. I mean, even the Wachowskis, who, if they'd only done The Matrix and they retired after that, legends, right? Living legends. Yeah. Then they did this movie, and it was like, okay, good take on Speed Racer, whether you're a fan of the show or not. But like, come on, guys! Like, give me something that's just a little bit tighter. This was like 2 hours and some change, and I was just like, too much. But I didn't hate it. I did not hate this movie. I want to be clear. This movie had all the right parts. I just thought they overstayed their welcome a little bit. So
yeah, I agree with you, Adrian. If they would have shaved off a little bit, you can see a lot more. You can get a lot more.
Exactly, my friend. So we're on the same wave. This is why it's brilliant to have you on the show.
Shave what off, Arnold?
Time.
Oh, time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which that's the thing about that's the thing about being rich, Arnold. Which someday you're going to be a rich man, Arnold. I can feel it. The biggest thing that rich people can buy, it's not boats, it's not houses, it's time. Right? And I want to buy back at least 30 minutes of my time from this 2-hour long movie. But then that's okay. That's okay. That's why we do this show, right? We don't all have to like the same stuff. We don't all have to hate the same stuff. Sometimes we meet in the middle. And this movie, it was entertaining. Like I wasn't bored by this. This movie didn't bore me because my ADHD ass was like, oh shit, scene after scene after scene after scene. You don't have time to be bored when watching this movie. So, having said all that, I'm going to give this movie a strong 2.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. And you can find me on Letterboxd at Boots Too Big. You can find the show everywhere else. Never Seen a Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook, and X. Visit our website at neverseenitpodcast.com. Email us at podcast.neverseenit@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you like the show, leave us a comment, leave us a review. You know we'll read that shit on the air. Big thanks to Mr. Kyle Maps and Burn Cycle for the intro and outro music. You can follow Kyle on Instagram at Softies_food_and_pets. You can follow Mr. HLP for the Arnold Snooze-O-Meter music, and thanks to him for that. Thanks for listening and watching and everywhere else. Everything else, I should say. Any final thoughts from the gang?
Go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go!